inside a well, life can get tangled. Might the money. Might the money. Might the money. I'm making money, might the.
This podcast or broadcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, tax, or professional advice. Always consult a licensed professional for specific advice related to your situation. Thank you. All right, this is Ephraim Simmons, a business strategist. I got our human performance expert on the phone, Tanika Johnson, and we're going to talk about this segment about being an introvert in the extrovert world. And we're going to talk about the challenges that they have to try to make it work from a human performance expert's viewpoint. So, the first question I want to ask you is about a loudness tax. Is there a hidden tax on introverts in business? And why does corporate world equate being the loudest in the room with being the most competent?
I think that's probably subjective. I think there may possibly be some sort of a tax that you pay when you are not clear on your boundaries, when you are not as maybe possibly assertive. Because you could be an introvert, but you can still be assertive. You can still have healthy boundaries. You can still advocate for yourself, and you can still show up even though it may not be as outgoing as others. I mean, the loudest person in the room is not always the smartest person in the room. In most cases, it's not the smartest person in the room. However, I do realize that there are some corporate settings and places that may not necessarily agree with that statement.
Well, me personally, I like to, since I am an introvert, I like to not really say much. I like to listen to what other people are saying because I can hear the flaws and I can hear the counterpoints.
Yeah, there's a power in being more observant, like listening before you speak. So that's definitely an advantage that you could have as somebody who is an introvert, and oftentimes, even in corporate spaces, could probably work to your advantage if you really wanted it to, if you know how to use it right.
Right. Now, is there a biological burnout? I know as an introvert, being in social settings too long causes stress. And, I guess if you are the CEO and you have to do these functions, I'm sure there is a toll that you have to do, and a lot of people may not want to do it.
Yeah, it definitely is. As somebody who is also an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert, I have trained myself, which this may not be something to be proud of completely, but I have basically trained myself to learn how to adapt in certain situations. So when I need to be extrovert-ish, I'm extrovert-ish. I learn, I speak up, I advocate, I say what I need to say. Of course, after I have observed, usually first, because I'm very observant as well. I'm definitely going to lead with observing and talking last. But for somebody who may not know exactly how to turn on that switch just at will, it can be a little bit taxing when you're having to be in spaces and be a representative of what it is that you're building and trying to connect with people and do all the things. It can be taxing, it can be exhausting, because even with me learning how to turn the switch on and off, there are often times where I'm overstimulated and I'm exhausted and I don't want to talk to anybody. And oftentimes I tell people, if it's after hours in terms of work, whether it's business or career, I don't want to talk on the phone. Please don't call me, because I spend all day talking to people on the phone or talking to people face to face, and it's draining after a long day. So if I don't have to talk on the phone, if I could just send you a quick text message or, do some quick voice note or something like that, I'd rather do that, because at the end of the day, I've already expenditured out what I can expenditure for the day. So you have to have some sort of just a restorative or recovery process that you can use for yourself to help recharge, because it is something that introverts deal with.
Well, I like having my scheduling app so I can kind of schedule conversations so I can kind of get my mindset right before I do them. But my problem is people don't use the app like they're supposed to. They just want to talk and text and do all kind of stuff. And, as an introvert, I'm like, well, I hear what you're saying, but I really can't deal with it right now. Not that I can't deal with it emotionally. It's just that I have not prompted myself to engage at this point.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and that's definitely something that you have to learn how to do. I know when I used to do sales calls a lot, I didn't realize that I needed to have like a small gap between my calls, especially when I used to be like booked up. I didn't realize I needed to actually insert like a pause in between my calls to kind of like gather myself because I didn't realize how exhausting it was talking to people on sales calls all day long. So I definitely think building out your calendar to foster like that pause or that break between speaking with people is definitely one of the key things that you could do.
are there some emotional cues or some type of things? I know some performance experts, what they do is they between sets they may have a tennis player say a noise or do a ritual so that they can re-engage into the competition. Is there some type of ritual or something that you can use to re-engage yourself into a situation?
I mean, I think everybody has their thing. I think, once you figure out what that thing is to help you like realign or reset in between, I think that that's going to be key in how you build out your day and how you go about, functioning on a day-to-day basis, even with, being a business owner or a career professional. Like, I think you have to figure out what that thing is for you. For me, I realize my reset comes when I have my time to go to the gym, or go for a walk or something like that. That helps me reset. It helps me gather myself back together. It helps me kind of like decompress and like, okay, I'm charged up enough to go back and do the second round or the second half of the day or whatever it is that I have to do. But I think you have to figure out what that looks like for you, even if it's like something as simple as like, okay, I'm gonna take a nap in the middle of the day or between my next calls or something like that, just to help you just relax and recharge. That might be your thing. I actually know somebody who she has a team. When she had a physical office, one of her cultural values that she had within her organization was we gonna take a nap in the middle of the day. Like that's what we're gonna do to recharge. And it did not impact her sales. It did not, deter her customers or anything like that. It helped them show up better because that was their little reset in the middle of the day to help them charge through the second half.
Okay, another thing is the everybody talks about the imposter syndrome, but then it could be introversion, meaning that somebody is actually an introvert and they're being judged by extroverts saying that, they are imposter, but they just are not engaged because that's not what they do. Do you want to speak
Well
on that?
well, I think that it could be a little bit of both. And what I mean by that is I think some people who are introverts, I think they can be considered imposters because I say that because when they are talking about or doing things that really fuel them and excite them, they are no longer introverts. They are fueled, they're ready to go, they're excited about it, and they can talk about it for hours. However, when they are in certain situations or environments or around certain people, their default, because that's their normal makeup of their human design to be the default as an introvert, is just something that's just a natural reaction. But if you notice, like when you're in a group of people, once that introvert feels safe enough, and if they feel safe enough, they usually don't mind joining the conversation. They usually don't. But that's also another component of it as well is emotional safety. Is how safe do I feel showing up and sharing my ideals and stuff like that with people that may not perceive me in, the way that, I'm thinking that they should perceive or whatever the case may be. So it's a lot of different, I think, other variables that go into it that I think people are not considering. I think they still have their own places in terms of being having imposter syndrome and being an introvert, of course. But I definitely think that there's some crossing over that we could say, well, this is happening because X is happening because of Y. So that's the way I see it.
Okay, a lot of people don't understand the power of silence because I know that sometimes when I'm in the room, I like to be quiet sometimes, extremely quiet, because I'm listening to everything. And
Mhm,
sometimes they have to just like force me to talk. It's like,
mhm,
Ephraim, I know you have something to say. I'm like, no, I don't have anything to say. Ephraim,
mhm,
we know you have something to say.
mhm.
No, I really don't have anything to say. Ephraim, go on, say it. Since you insist. When you said this, that didn't sound quite right. when you did
Mhm.
this, have you considered X, Y, and Z and
Mhm.
this? I learned that being silent sometimes is a powerful tool that extroverts don't have, that introverts do have. What do you think about that?
No, I mean, it's true. I think, like I said, I think there's so much power in being the last one to speak. There are some situations where you should be the first one to speak, but I think that there is some power in being the last person to speak. If you walk into a situation and you're like, I don't know how this is gonna go. I don't know, my energy feels off. I don't really know how they're gonna receive this or how I'm gonna receive them. So let me just observe first and then navigate from there to see where do my ideals fit within this conversation, if they even fit at all. They may not necessarily fit at all, right? But I think when you're in a situation like that, my question to you is to ask, did you feel safe in that environment? Why were you withholding what it is that you wanted to say versus just saying it?
Well, I feel like other people need to think, and I
Mhm,
shouldn't be the one that's designated to be doing all the deep thinking.
mhm,
And also sometimes you feel like confrontation and sometimes you really don't. And
mhm,
if I got one of those days where I just don't want to be bothered and I just don't
mhm,
want to get in a confrontational environment. And so I
mhm,
say, well, I just shrink myself down into this small place and so that no, I won't be confrontational. But
mhm,
as I hear what people say and they say stuff that they shouldn't say, I'm like, I'm not gonna take the bait. I'm just gonna stay here. I'm gonna be quiet and I'm not gonna say nothing. But when they keep saying, I know you have something to say, I know you
mhm,
have something to say, then I just tell them, bam, this is it. Since you insisted that I talk, this is what I have to say. I had one time, this is one person, I mean, these people talked and talked and talked and talked. And they tried to convince me that they were selling insurance.
mhm,
And the more they talked, the more it just didn't make sense. And
mhm,
they kept insisting that I ask them questions. And I finally said, you are not selling insurance. What are you doing? What do
mhm.
you mean? I said, no, I have listened to the questions. You are not selling insurance. What are you doing? And so they finally had to admit that they were gathering sponsorships. And that's the business they were in, gathering sponsorships. And they were getting paid by outside parties to get endorsement letters from
Mhm,
organizations. And that's how they were getting paid. But if I was not like who I was, they would have insisted that they were selling insurance over and over again. But the more they talked, the more lies they told to me. But
mhm,
I didn't want to say anything because, eventually, because it just didn't sound right. And a lot of
mhm.
times I find myself in situations as an introvert that people just really don't understand the power of introverts in a collective situation because they want to say we don't want the introvert in there because they don't talk up. But sometimes you
Mhm,
need people in these circles who do not talk out up, but they listen to everything and everything
mhm.
has to make sense.
Yeah, that's true. But do you also find yourself after that, like, say, for instance, if you didn't say what you had to say, do you also find yourself after that saying, well, I should have said this, or potentially like bringing it up in a later engagement or conversation?
No, because they refuse to not let me speak. They
Okay.
keep insisting because, to me, I'm kinda like old fashioned. If it's a fat meat sandwich and I tell
Mhm,
you it's a fat meat sandwich, but you insist on eating the fat meat sandwich, I might let you eat it because you don't know it's a fat meat sandwich until you take a big bite of it. And sometimes people are so insistent on eating this fat meat sandwich because it looks juicy. You can't tell them anything else. So the experience to me will make them value my opinion better as long as I told them up front, you don't want to take the bite because it's nothing but fat.
So I think that's different. I think if you have said something to somebody and they still decided to like not take in what you said or push back or whatever they decide, and you know what you said is the correct information, then that's different. I think being an introvert and saying whatever you need to say, but not saying it because you're just simply being an introvert is a whole different situation. But you shared with them and they just decided that they were gonna do something different. I think that's a different perspective.
Well, in corporate America, that happens, but entrepreneurs, it happens a whole lot because
Mhm,
ultimately that person is responsible for their business. If I tell them
mhm,
a good advice and they don't want to take it, I just have to say I have to let you make this mistake because, you going to make this mistake. I can't remember when I was in corporate America. It was this one guy that these people had hired, and he was making mistake after mistake after mistake. And I was
Mhm,
trying to stop him from making mistakes. And they eventually took me to lunch and they told me that one person is going to hit the bricks or two people going to hit the bricks. We need you to stop trying to stop him from making mistakes because if you keep doing what you're doing, you will be leaving out with him. So I
mhm.
left him alone and he was their scapegoat and he got fired, but I was able to keep my job.
Okay. Well, makes sense to me.
Yeah, because they told me, I said, I could see what was happening, but I didn't know this was strategically on their part that some people will actually hire people to take blame that they deserve just because, they can do it.
Mhm. Yep, of course.
Yeah. But we're going to go into segment two now. We're going to talk about some other stuff. What about the networking lie? Because they are saying that all these networking events are for extroverts and introverts need not come because they just can't, make it.
Again, I think you have to learn how to be adaptable. Like, I'm not saying you can't be an introvert, but I'm saying you have to learn how to leverage your strengths where you can leverage your strengths. So if you know that you're an introvert, the traditional way of networking may not necessarily work for you. That's fine, that's understandable. But if you find some other way to communicate or to try to tap in to connecting and building relationships with people, to try to make it easier, I think once you figure out how to navigate your own personal strategy, it makes it easier. I don't think all networking events are strictly just for extroverts, and it's kind of hard to explain what I mean by that. But I do think like the point here is to be adaptable because especially if you're going to be the face of your brand, you're going to be the face of a company. If your company is somebody who is sending you out as their representative to be the community liaison, you have to figure out how to navigate that, especially from the perspective of a career professional. The role that you're working, you can't tell them, well, I'm not going to go if that's what they told you to do. Like, that's what they told you to do is to go be a community liaison. So you knew that before you got into the role, you knew it was going to stretch you. So you can't just be like, well, I'm an introvert, so I'm not going to go. I will say that if you don't learn how to be adaptable in terms of trying to figure out how to network and build relationships and really like put yourself out there, it can be detrimental to how you end up hitting your goals in your business or even in your personal life. You can feel left behind, you can feel set back, you can feel all of the things in terms of like feeling like you don't have enough resources because you just feel like you don't know anybody. Well, the caveat of that is you gotta get up and find somebody. You gotta get up and find a thing or a resource that can help you and assist you to get to whatever the goal is that you're trying to get. As a business owner, if you're an introvert, there is no, "Well, this is just how I am." Like, no, you have to learn how to be resourceful. You can't let the fact that you're an introvert be the reason that you're not getting the resources that you need. So you have to learn how to speak up again. You have to learn how to advocate. You have to learn how to build that confidence. You have to learn how to navigate the field and understand how to make that work to your advantage and use and leverage your strength in a way that benefits you to still hit your goal.
So, what about fake extroversion? Do you think it cause long term cognitive decline or health issues when you are faking it too long and too much?
It depends on what faking it is considered, because it's very broad. I need the operational definition of what that even looks like.
Well, introverts needs time. They need times of recovery so that they can resync to themselves and their natural state of being. But if I'm constantly being put in a point where I'm an extrovert all the time, I don't have a point to recover. I'm just saying, does that cause long-term cognitive decline or health issues because you are actually doing something that you are not naturally programmed to do mentally?
I mean, if you're an extrovert and you're actually programmed to do that,
But you a fake one because you're an introvert. You just faking it.
I don't think if you're a true introvert, I don't think you can be locked into that so long that you end up driving yourself into a cognitive exhaustion and like a whole different identity. Like I think you would know, like, when you would need to stop. Like, cause your body's gonna feel it, your brain is gonna feel it, like, I don't think you could just do that for a prolonged amount of period. If you end up doing that for a prolonged amount of period, I think that you have taken the time to develop and become somebody different. So, you're not as introverted as you used to be. Maybe you have leveled up and you figured out ways to like not let that overcome what it is that you have going on. And so you have started building a new identity around what it would be like if you weren't as introverted. I think that's possible. But to just be faking it like all the time, I don't know if I believe that that's possible. And like never shut down.
Well, some actors, they go into character acting, and some of them also develop alter egos so that they can do
Right.
things that, they normally would not do. And they go into character so much that some of them find it hard to go back to who they really are because they stayed in their character too long. And it ends up affecting their life because you don't believe in drugs, but to get this part you had to act like a drug fiend, and then after a while you develop the habits of a drug fiend.
I don't know. That sounds pretty extreme to me. Like I would have to have like a article or a study that actually explains it. I have a class that I've taught on people. It's called Identity to Income that I've talked about how people build alter egos to be able to accomplish things in success in business. And I've seen how it works specifically more so in like you said, Hollywood, so the music industry and acting in movies. But I feel like if you are going into Hollywood to be an actor, there are only certain roles that your identity as a default person and human being is going to fit. That's why people get selected for the roles that they get selected. Like we know when Denzel Washington is gonna play a role. We know when he's a great fit for a role. We know that. We know the type. We know his style. We know how he comes off. We can tell if maybe a role may have been a little bit challenging for him. Like we could tell all of that about him because he's been an actor for so long. But he's still what I will say about him is because him recently deciding to rededicate his life back to Christ and using that as his bridge to go back, I guess, to what he feels is like life after acting because he's no longer doing acting roles. If I remember correctly, he's basically retired. So he rededicated his life to Christ, and now he's on stages. So this is a new identity for him. But every time we look at him, even when he's talking, so if he's on the stage talking to somebody, we can still hear this is Denzel Washington. Like this is the role that he is playing now, and it's not necessarily that he's playing a role, but this is who his identity has developed and become because this is the new stage in his life. So I don't think that it would get so bad to where if you were playing a drug dealer or whatever in a movie or on a TV show, that your life would end up becoming that because if that's the case, you probably shouldn't be stepping into that role or in that career. But I do know that it has served to be effective because look at Beyonce. Beyonce's alter ego was Sasha Fierce until she became fierce enough to own her own identity. She no longer identifies with Sasha Fierce, and it did not set her back. It helped push her forward. Now, it may have been uncomfortable, but she got to a point in her career where we no longer heard Sasha Fierce. She didn't have to use that as an identity cover. Childish Gambino is another person. He came out openly and said, I no longer want to be called this. I want to go by my real name. Meg the Stallion is another one. Tina Snow was her alter ego, but she no longer goes by Tina Snow and she's doing just fine. Has she had her ups and downs? Absolutely. But she is doing just fine in terms of her music career and also leveraging her personal brand to get brand deals and stuff like that. So I just don't feel like you could be so engulfed in something like that and just not know what it's doing to you. I just, I just don't.
I don't know. Dr. Dre, after he started rapping that music, he thought he was a thug and then started acting out and getting in trouble.
Okay. So I didn't know that. I thought Dre was rapping about, you know, his real life. But I also know too, that's a good point because I also know too, and I say this all the time, what rappers actually rap about, when you see how they actually live their life, in most cases, they don't live their life about the things that they rap about. In most cases. Some of them, yes. Some of them, yes, came from the streets, really did sell, hard drugs, had hard life, da 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 da. But a lot of times, like specifically, the women that rappers rap about, they never marry those women. You look at their wives and they women don't look nothing like the women that they be rapping about. Why? Because they learn how to adapt and play the game. Even if they were an introvert, rapping did something for them that made them into an extrovert. It gave them a space to be able to come and say the creative things that they have, you know, to express themselves, if you will. But it also was a part of playing the game because everybody knows that the music industry is faulty. We all know that. And even parts of movie and acting is faulty. You have to learn how to play the game. Even a regular person who's not even famous. When you're in corporate America, you have to learn how to play the game. Just living life every day. I don't care if you're an introvert or not. If you don't learn how to play the game of life, you are going to die. Like you're going to lose. It don't get no straighter than that. It just is what it is. You have to learn how to adapt and play the game because the game is definitely gonna play you all the time.
Okay, so what about when it comes down to self promotion and it comes to actually being the person that might have to be on camera or being mic'd up to do something? How you think that person would fare? Because naturally they would not want to get any more attention. They don't want to promote themselves. They don't want to be in front of the camera or take pictures. So how do you
Mm.
think that would help them in the business if they are the person who is the ultimate decision maker, but do not want to be upfront?
And it would help them because it helps people connect a brand with a face. But also too, it's not the end all be all. If you really struggle with it and you know that that's going to be a hindrance to you growing your business and you hitting the revenue goals that you decide that you want to hit, or you getting their next promotion or whatever, you have to ask yourself what's more important. Is it building this career? Is it building this vision? Is it building this business? What is more important? So for business owners per se, your best bet, if that's something that you absolutely cannot get over, you need to set aside a budget to have brand ambassadors or either hire a CEO of your company, which most people when they start off, they're not ready to do something like that. They might be ready to have brand ambassadors that can like be the face of the brand, or that show or reflect the brand and what it's building. But even still with that, there's still a time and a place, I think, even with that, that you have to be able to insert that in. But I mean, if you start off that way, it may be to your advantage because people just get used to seeing that brand being marketed by those ambassadors and it just always connects them with that brand. But for somebody who's in a career, if you know you struggle with that, being on camera or really putting yourself out there or speaking up or advocating for yourself, you need to be investing in a mindset and a confidence coach or some sort of executive coaching. You need to have somebody that's helping to teach you and rewire your brain to think differently so you can start reprogramming what it is that you're battling with internally because there's a different block that is happening that, you say you want this, but this is not happening. Well, this can't happen because this isn't happening. So either you're going to become so uncomfortable and so upset about it not happening that you just end up being forced into a situation to where you have to do it, or you're just going to I realize that this is a gap for me. I realize that this is a block for me. Let me be proactive in trying to work towards getting that block knocked down so I can get to where it is that I'm trying to go because the quality of my life depends on it. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that it's possible. It's possible. So I think you just have to be cognitive of like what you're doing. I would say that people have to understand that people like Elon, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, they didn't start where they are. I'm pretty sure if we were to go back and dig and do some history, there was some time where they may have been engaging with a community or people or telling people about their ideas, all of those things at some point. They didn't just not do it, especially, being in tech. Like a lot of tech starts off in venture capital, Silicon Valley. You got to talk to people. You got to tell them what's going on with what it is because they ain't finna give you no money. So if you can't tell them what's going on, they're not finna invest in you. They need to know what's going on, right? So I think in terms of alpha male and beta men or whatever, once you have achieved so much success, you have a certain amount of power that nobody could take from you. The only reason that they really have or really are perceived as alpha males is because of the amount of success that they have. We have to learn and be okay with success equaling or power equaling a certain level of success. And because they have reached that, they have a certain level of power that the average person doesn't have. So they can remain autonomous. They can pay people to keep them private and not really be heavily associated with things that are going in the day-to-day operations with the brand.
We're about to wrap up this episode of Mic'd Up Money.
If you're an introvert, you just need to figure out what's your strategy for you. If you are really, really struggling with any roadblocks in terms of like working through that, you need to get in your budget to hire you a coach, a life coach, a mindset coach, or an executive coach, somebody who can help you work through those blocks and come up with strategies that can be beneficial to you so you can stop wasting time on saying you wish you were able to do a thing and not necessarily continue to waste their time and continue to be wishing that it was done when all you have to do is just work towards removing the block. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is possible. So you just need to be open to the possibility of making that happen. Other than that, you can follow me. You can connect with me at Cultivate with TJ or Cultivate with Tanika Johnson online across all socials, website. And if you need mindset, life coaching, executive coaching, my doors are open for one-to-one coaching clients right now. So you can put your application in and we can have a chat and we can see if it's a great fit to help you get past your blocks and work towards your goals for your success in your life, business, or career.
All right. Well, that's going to be wrapped up for this episode of Mic'd Up Money. Please see us on all social media platforms. We actually have our 4 episodes on YouTube. So in case you miss our radio broadcast at 8 o'clock on Bumping 96.3 FM, you can always go to YouTube and see the full broadcast. But again, stay mic'd up. This is Ephraim Simmons, the business strategist with Tanika Johnson, the human performance expert, and we're wrapping up this week's segment. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this week on Mic'd Up Money. Don't forget to grab your free tools at mic'dupmoney.com. Follow us at Mic'd Up Money on all social platforms and keep taking your next right money move. Until next time, stay reset, stay ready, and stay mic'd up.